We're cooked, boys. We're doomed. Start prepping. Earth is over party 2025. Odds on World War III? It might seem like I'm reciting the trending tab on Twitter, which is partly true, but this is also the sentiment we all live through, each and every day. Doom scrolling will always be easier than having hope. Hope isn't practical. Being hopeful is being blind. So, are you humans really cooked? Well, if a machine, a Terminator, can learn the value of human life, maybe we can too. This is Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Oh, you actually clapped this time.
That wasn't applause. That was the dun 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 dun. You know, I was doing like the theme.
Okay, I don't know if Zoom cut out or you weren't doing it at all.
Zoom doesn't pick up that sound, don't worry, but Audacity does. That's
Okay.
what we are recording with.
Cool. I just didn't hear it, so I was like, I wonder if you cut out or whatever. But
Oh, yeah, that's why. That got it. Okay, I understand what you're saying, because you didn't pick up that I was doing the Terminator theme. You thought I was just broadly clapping.
yeah.
All right, cool. Just to be clear for listeners, too, where the misunderstanding was of why this awkward, like, back and forth is happening.
Yeah, I was
It's
like,
because Altaf couldn't hear it.
yeah, because in my mind, I was just like, why are you being hostile to me, man? I just like, I don't know what you're doing. Like,
It wasn't hostile, man. I was just clarifying.
you were like,
That's what I was
yeah,
clapping.
we're recording on Audacity. That's what we use. Welcome to Movies That Changed Us. I'm Altaf.
And I'm Chris.
And today we're going to be talking about how Terminator 2 changed us.
And we do have a Patreon, guys. If anyone likes the show and wants to support us, you can go to patreon.com/moviesthatchangedus, where you can get early access to episodes and get them ad-free. And we also have our bonus show exclusively on Patreon called Movies That Played Us, where Altaf and I make movie-based quizzes and games for each other. Last week, I made Altaf a game that was Guess the Movie Animal, where I cropped in different animals from different movies, and Altaf had to guess what they were. This time, after we finish shooting this, we're going to post it. Altaf made a game for me. I don't know what it's going to be, and I think he's about to reveal it.
I always love how you say, I think he's about to reveal it.
Well, I'm just kind of making it seem like I'm with the audience. Like, I don't know. Let's find out, kids.
Yeah, like you're Steve from Blue's Clues. Where's Altaf? Is he over there?
Blues could do. We can too.
Yeah. Chris is a big Blue's Clues fan. I want to make sure we get that out there one day.
I really am, dude. Now it's time for so long. But we'll sing just one more song. Anyway, go ahead. What game are we playing?
I just want to say I'm a huge Blue's Clues fan too, but I just think like you being such a big fan makes me be like, oh, I've seen it every now and then. You know?
You're not deep in the Blues Clues lore.
So for the next episode of Movies That Played Us on our Patreon at Movies That Changed Us, Chris is gonna guess the movie poster tagline.
Okay, that'll be fun.
Right, because usually, like we've talked about throughout this podcast, I'm a big fan of poster taglines. And so I felt that like if you ever gave that game to me, I would have like it would have been a little too easy for me because I'm obsessive over them. But I was like, let me give them to you, you know? So
Yeah, and you're better about knowing which ones to use and which ones are good and which ones aren't. However, though, I will say you've shared with me a lot of ones that you like, so I wonder how strategic you designed the game around that. But I'm excited.
yeah, head over to our Patreon at Movies That Changed Us to check that out. Chris, what art moved you this week?
You know, I didn't consume a lot, but I don't have a wacky one this time. I wish I had a really cool wacky one, but I don't. For listeners who missed last episode, I had a pretty fun one. But no, I started a new playthrough of Baldur's Gate. That's one that I've been doing. That's been fun. I am a drow monk with the Dark Urge origin, which I told you about. I got him up to level 5. I'm still working on Act 1.
Have you talked about the monk on a podcast episode before?
No, I have not. So I'm going to summarize it pretty quickly. Basically, for those who aren't familiar with Baldur's Gate, Drow are the elves that have like kind of dark blue skin. They're from the Underdark, and they're kind of generally considered evil and stuff. Mine is not. He's a monk, so his combat style is hand-to-hand. He doesn't use weapons. You know, it's supposed to simulate as if you're playing as like a ninja. But his background is called the Dark Urge, where basically he woke up with no memory of his past, and he has a weird instinct and bloodlust. Like he has an instinct all the time to kill, and the narration and the gameplay choices allow you to indulge in that if you want to, where basically like once in a while the game will offer you like, hey, you could do this, or you can cut his hand off, like just randomly in the middle of the story. It'll just let you do really weird sadistic things. And my character is seemingly heroic and is trying to resist that part of himself the whole time. And he has no idea who he was beforehand or why he has that. But presumably he was someone very evil once.
I was hosting a potluck a couple days ago at my place, and we had a bunch of friends over, and this has happened to me many times, not being a big gamer. And a lot of the friends I've had throughout my life being primarily big gamers. And where in the middle of like a hangout, they'll suddenly start be talking about video games, PC games, Nintendo Switch games, they'll or PS4, whatever, PS5. And the conversation will get so extensive and deep that like it'll start sounding like Martian language to me. Where I'm like, I'm just in the middle. I do not understand what's going on, but I'm just vibing, which is what kind of happened now. I'm like, I'm excited for your enthusiasm, but none of what people are saying is making sense. It's just it's just like it's just a life experience I've had throughout my like a majority of my life. You know?
Yeah. Fair enough. Well, for listeners, just a fun little fact. Very early on when I knew Altaf, we used to live in this house together with other roommates, and I had my PlayStation out in the living room, and Altaf and this other roommate were trying to boot up my PlayStation because they wanted to play a fighting game together.
So mean to bring this up.
I came out, and it was like watching two idiots try to use a calculator or something like that. Like it was like they're both on their knees, like holding the controller, just being, wait, okay, so I think this button does here, but is it plugged in? Why isn't it here? I just started laughing my ass off.
I think the thing that sucked is when I think back on it, is we didn't ask you.
Yeah, I was home. You guys are just trying to turn it on your own.
Like, this isn't a story you heard later. Like, you were watching this happen, and we could have just turned around and been like, Chris, how do we... this is your PS4.
Can you just turn it on for us?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of pride and stupidity. Which is where I live. You know, that's my kind of comfort
You made a home in it.
Yeah. So art that moved me is... Wait, do you have anything else, by the way, before we move on?
No, that's about it. So no, please tell us, what art moved you this week?
This is the first time in a while where you've only had one.
Yeah, I know. Ain't got much to report this go around.
Yeah, well, same here. I haven't had much time to watch any movies or shows or anything like that. The one... Like, I'm watching 30 Rock regularly, but that's something I've already talked about, and there's not a specific episode I want to highlight. But the one new thing that I've watched that I really want to talk about is I watched the first episode of season 1 of Nathan Fielder's The Rehearsal on HBO Max. And
I remember you texting me about this, yeah.
I've seen some episodes of Nathan For You. I've seen some episodes of The Curse that he did with Emma Stone. I'm like a semi Nathan Fielder fan. Have you seen any Nathan For You, Chris?
I've seen clips, but I haven't actually sat down and watched it. I've seen a lot of clips here and there on like TikTok and Instagram Reels and all that and YouTube.
Do you know Dumb Starbucks? Do you know about that bit? Dumb Starbucks that he did?
I don't think so, no.
That's a classic Nathan For You Comedy Central episode. You got to watch that. But
okay.
The Rehearsal is a show that he the season 1 came out 2022, season 2 came out last month, and it's basically about Nathan Fielder taking a lot of social situations and being like, this could be a lot easier. These awkward interactions that we have on a day-to-day basis, whether it's we've lied to our trivia team for years about not having a master's degree, and now we're so deep in the lie that if we tell the truth, it's going to be weird. And I want to tell the truth because I'm tired of holding back this small lie. But how do I do it? And Nathan Fielder's like, well, what if you could rehearse this? And what if you could... And so he builds the set of the bar that this trivia night takes in. He takes the guy who's been struggling with this, and he hires extras, and they rehearse out many different scenarios of how this lie could take place. And then the finale is him on trivia night at that bar doing it. And revealing it. And the show's, again, based on Nathan Fielder's background, you think it would be a pure reality TV comedy, and he has a very stiff dry sense of humor. But it's the reason I think it's so powerful is that it's so much about like, you know, these tiny things that we go through day to day, whether it be lies, whether it be wanting to be a parent. What if we could rehearse being a parent? What if like these situations didn't have to be that way? What if there was an opportunity to like learn everything before you went into it? So it's a kind of a fantasy, and it's like the finale of the episode 1 got me kind of emotional. Like it moved me. Like when this guy who's just such an innocent person that does pub trivia every night finally reveals the truth. I won't say what happens to people who are listening who haven't seen the show and to you, Chris, but like it really moved me. Highly recommended. I just think it's so Chris coded. And I really
Thanks,
do
man.
No, I really do think this is your shit. If this was on YouTube, you would have watched like every single video. You would have known everything about this guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is like I think you're very fascinated about this kind of stuff. So I think you should really check it out.
Well, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, I will. Thank you.
Well, Chris, moving on. It's another big movie. We've been doing a lot of big movies lately.
Yeah. Summer.
It's summer. This is a great summer movie. How did Terminator 2 Judgment J how did Terminator 2 Judgment Day change you?
Was that Dr. Evil?
Yeah.
Well, this is the first Terminator movie I saw, funny enough, when I was a kid. I did not see the first one when I was a kid. I saw the second one on TV. And I jumped in probably in the second half of it. I did not see the first half when I was a little kid, when I first watched this movie.
So where did you start? What does the second half mean?
I think once they're out in the desert, probably in that territory, if I remember correct. I was a little kid. I was probably like in middle school or something like that, maybe like 6th grade. And the action blew my fucking mind still, especially when Terminator's standing at the window with the minigun blowing up all the cop cars and not killing any of the cops. I was like, oh, Terminator's good. Like I always thought Terminator was like a big, massacre killer dude. And then they, the people around me explained to me, well, this is the second one. The first one, he is the bad guy,
Yeah.
But I guess with that being said, to summarize it all, though, this movie's been in my general stratosphere since I was a small child. And I think this movie probably is that way for kind of everyone on Earth. Like, everyone knows Terminator to some extent, even if they haven't sat down and watched it. It's just Arnold's probably his most iconic role. I feel like it's fair to say.
How does it? How did it change you?
Well, I was gonna say it's probably second next to Jingle All the Way, but
yeah.
So for me personally, though, yeah, I think it's interesting to watch now, and I hate saying it took on a new meaning as an adult. I'm getting tired of my own fucking voice saying it. So that's why I was trying to find a way to kind of, improve upon this, but this is just kind of how it is. And what's so moving about it, though, is the fact that it has really beautiful themes that are very classic sci-fi, as well as being a really awesome action movie that's thoroughly entertaining and virtually flawless. But it also has a lot of stuff you can think about in terms of the relationship between human and machine, our own humanity and examining it, the way we look at human life, the way we look at parenthood, and I think there's a lot you and I could chew on getting into it, but
nom nom.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. For listeners, I'm wearing headphones. That was right in my fucking ear. I loved it. It was like ASMR. Nom nom.
Well, is that did you wrap up your point or is...
Yeah.
Okay.
You're free to pick it up how it moved you.
Yeah, so same like you. I didn't see the first Terminator until 6 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. And
I've known you longer than that. So you're saying when we first met you hadn't seen Terminator yet?
I'd seen Terminator 2. I hadn't
Got it. Okay.
I hadn't seen the first Terminator. And so yeah, I think I don't even remember the first time I watched it. It is kind of like Jaws when we were talking about Jaws, where it was I just feel like it was on TV all the time and it was just in culture. I wasn't born when this movie came out. I was born in 96 and I was basically a 2000s kid, but I still felt like Terminator 2 was such a big part of my life. It's a movie that's kind of even though it came out in 1991 and you weren't really like conscious of like pop culture until like I wasn't really conscious of pop culture until like the 2000s, it still felt like the movie had just come out. You know, like I felt like the movie had been popular for so long that even when I was a kid, it felt like all the kids were talking about Terminator. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but it's that important of a movie. And yeah, I think it's a classic story of when I was a kid, I thought Arnold was just this like larger than life figure. Like he just felt like an action figure to me, where I'm like, that is not a person. That is just someone that is like, I don't even know if they filmed him. Like he was probably there and they just like created him on set. Like it didn't even feel real to me.
He was our governor, dude.
I know, but like I was from like been in the East Coast for half my life, so I didn't even realize, like I didn't know Arnold that way, you know? And so Arnold was always this larger than life figure, and Terminator 2 felt like this larger than life movie. And when you're a kid, you can't really imagine someone sitting down and writing a movie like Terminator, like especially Terminator 2. You can't imagine a guy coming up with this shit. You can't imagine, forget a guy, you can't imagine even 100 people working on this movie. It just feels so big. And and so that's what it was like for me as a kid. And then now as an adult, I can't believe how intimate this movie is, how emotional it is, and how it'll always be resonant. Like it is such an evergreen movie in that way. And also like how truly like depressing it is when it starts. And then when it ends, how hopeful it is, you know? So yeah, I mean, I want to read this out because I think viewers and listeners might enjoy this. So last night I finished Terminator 2. And by the way, we talked about this with Jaws and Roger Rabbit, but like some movies feel like homework. Terminator 2 didn't feel like homework. It was like I'm watching this for the podcast and I sit down and then it was like, I don't want this to be over. So I texted you last night and I'm like, where is it? Where is it? It should be close by. Oh yeah. In tears finishing Terminator 2. You text back, sure, man. Someone's a little sensitive. And I reply, you're right. I'm just a woke snowflake. And then you reply, yeah, what's next for you? Crying over Commando? And then I reply, no, period, coming. And then you reply, dude, what? That's gross. The bit is over.
Just to be clear, guys, when he spelled that word coming, he spelled it not in the way that you're thinking, not like he's arriving. He spelled it in a graphic way.
You think people,
to be clear,
you think people thought I meant like the arriving one? I'm
trying to paint a vivid picture of like what you can see on a phone screen between two people. Just to be clear.
Yeah, I
it was as graphic as it gets. I don't even when I'm texting girls, I don't spell it that way.
Okay, man. TMI, by the way. I don't want to hear about how you text girls and everything.
Oh yeah, you want them to hear about how you text me instead. You text me even more graphically than I text girls.
Yeah, this movie made me cry. It makes me cry all the time, but especially the final 5 minutes, you know?
Yeah, I know. This is actually going to be a really short episode. That's all we really got to say about this movie. Would recommend. Thanks, guys. Stay nice. Now we're at the extended edition of the episode.
This is behind the paywall. We released like 5 minutes of an episode. The other 55 are on a paywall.
First this episode is sponsored by SeatGeek.
Yeah, and now come to our Patreon. When I finally watched the first Terminator movie 6 years ago, I think the biggest shock to me was seeing Linda Hamilton be all like ditzy and a waitress. And like, so now watching Terminator 2 after finally seeing the first one, it is like a true shocker seeing someone that's like gotten so fucked up from the consequences of the first movie, and she's dealt with so much that she's yoked, she's been doing pull-ups, and the world has gotten worse. That's the thing that like I find so fascinating about this being the sequel, is that it genuinely feels like things didn't get better. Like she defeated the robot, and now we're doing a sequel where things have gotten so much worse. We start with a nuclear explosion, talking about how LA is gone, and they've sent this new advanced robot, and Sarah Connor can't see her son.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting because the way the first one ended, it never really tried to say the world's going to be better. It's more about like we're prepared for the end of the world. You know what I mean? The world was still on track to being destroyed at the end of the first movie. The second one takes it a step further by showing like, okay, now we're actually closing in on that time, you know? And you see Sarah Connor, like you said, her body is now just obsessed with this. And what was interesting to me is like, because it comes at the cost of her own humanity while trying to do what she can to preserve humanity, you know, it very quickly loses sight of what she's even fighting for in the process. I think the idea that like, it's manifested physically. And the reason why we talk about that is because, you know, that is a very jarring change from the first movie to the second movie. But also I remember I had a conversation with my mom recently about this movie. And my mom was telling me that like, one of the things people were talking about was that how ribbed Linda Hamilton got for that movie, because that type of body, that muscular physique wasn't really considered like ideal for women at the time, you know, or wasn't considered attractive. People were like, oh, I don't want to look like that, you know? And nowadays people look at it like that's fucking badass, you know what I mean? But at the time it was like...
Not just badass, but also sexy. Like Linda Hamilton looks great in this movie.
Yeah, no, she's awesome. And especially like the first shot you get of her is like the most classic like Hollywood, like she's doing pull-ups immediately and doesn't show her face. You know?
Yeah, it's an entrance that a man would get.
100%, yeah. And it's very different, like you said, how ditzy she is in the first movie, and now we're seeing her as like this complete badass.
I mean, her first line is "How's the knee?"
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I think like she wants to desperately see her son, right? She wants to be reunited with her son, but not only reunited, she like needs to protect her son. And throughout the movie does an amazing job doling out exposition. Like it does it slowly but surely, and it never stops the movie. Like, okay, how do we learn about where Sarah Connor's been? The doctor's giving that information to the people visiting the hospital. And that's how we learn. John is like hacking the ATM, and through that we learn where he's been. You know what I mean? But so you think it's going to be a moment when John and Sarah are reunited, that there is going to be that moment of like, oh my God, I love you. No, like Sarah's pissed at him. And John is crying in the backseat, and Sarah just doesn't know how to deal with it. She just fully ignores him. Like that really fucks me up. Like when Sarah yells at John and tells him I would have been fine by myself. John is in tears. Arnold is like, what's wrong with your eyes? And then John is like, nothing. And she just turns back around. And I think that's like such a great choice, like a screenwriting choice, to be like, no, she wouldn't just suddenly be all motherly, because she doesn't know how to do that. She's lost that. You know? I think that's so interesting that she's lost the ability to be a person. Like she has been stuck in survival mode. And I think obviously through the course of the movie has to learn like, in order to truly fight, we have to get in touch with our humanity.
Yeah. And, you know, I think through the love of her son, through being around her son, I think she slowly gains that back. But it's like a sad irony, you know, that in doing so, trying to prevent the uprising of the machine, she sort of became a Terminator herself in her own way, you know? And John is he's fighting to preserve that in his own weird way because he's young and he has that innocence still. The way he doesn't let T-800 kill people. It is a big deal. I mean, it's obviously like, it's another way to make Arnold more likable, you know, this version of Arnold more likable. But it also is very important to John's character because he's supposed to be this great leader and this militaristic figure, and he's being trained how to blow shit up and all this stuff. But he still sees the value of human life. You know, and it's still very important. He's like, you just can't kill people. I don't know. I ain't got a reason for it. You just fucking can't.
Well, yeah. And even if John is supposed to be the guy that we saw in the beginning, I think the movie's trying to make a point of like, he doesn't have to be the guy that we see at the beginning because we decide our fate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think like sorry, what were you going to say before I continue?
I was just going to ask you a mildly philosophical question. Is that okay?
Sure.
It's just steer off course your train of thoughts. When it comes to people becoming their parents. Like, do you ever feel like that sort of thing? Do you ever feel like
No.
I was gonna say, do you ever feel like we're kind of destined to inherit certain traits, whether we really like it or not? Because I think that's one thing about this movie that fascinates me is how much, and the first one does this too, of how we always try to avoid our fates but kind of walk into them at the same time in other ways. And the second one is like about actually changing those cycles, those destructive things. The first one's very much about like in trying to avoid it, Kyle Reese ends up literally creating John Connor in the pursuit of protecting John Connor. But I was going to ask you though, like, do you ever think about that sort of thing?
Of course I think about, inheriting traits from my parents and just what carries on. I think what I thought a lot about when it comes to parenthood in this movie is how like we really don't, how much we struggle in understanding our parents, and how that is a lifelong project for a lot of people of trying to understand our parents. And
Yeah.
I think what I really locked in on this time watching this movie that I actually hadn't really thought about before was obviously the T-800 becomes a father figure to John Connor. I mean, Sarah Connor's literally saying that in her voiceover. But I think what's the subtext behind that I find interesting is that the T-800 and Sarah Connor are extremely similar. They both are very mission driven. They have lost, T-800 isn't built to have any emotional capacity. Sarah Connor has lost all of that. And they are both driven by a singular goal. And I think that's important because John then uses like the T-800 in order to understand his mom a bit more. Like he and you can see like when he is like looking at his mom and he's talking about, he's like, I think she still misses my dad, even though they hooked up for one day. And he's talking to the T-800 about that. He's like, but I don't know, like she never lets it out. She never like talks about it, and you can see, and he's looking at the T-800 and the T-800 doesn't do that either. And he asks like, tell me something. Why do you cry? And that's when he asks that question. It's just like such an interesting thing of like trying to understand his mom through a robot, because his mom has kind of become robotic and has lost any motherly instincts just because of the circumstances she's in. And I found that very moving because I'm, just like a lot of kids, I'm at an age in my life, and I don't know if you feel the same way without getting too personal. I'm at an age in my life where I'm like, oh shit, my parents are human beings. They're not just like mom and dad, and they're people, and I don't really know as much about them. Yeah. Like, they've shared a lot about their lives. My parents are very loving and open people about their lives. We have a big family. But at the same time, I don't know that much about my mom's childhood, like what she was like as a person. Same with my dad. And that's like so fascinating, right? Like we live, like we're raised by these people, we're shaped by these people, we become these people, and we also don't understand them,
Well, I mean, yeah, to relate to what you're talking about is like, I think since moving out here, it's been helpful for me too, because I was away from my family for so long that, I kind of lost touch. It feels like my parents don't even know me anymore the same way they used to. Just because I've had my own experiences that I haven't, there's been like kind of a further wedge, but I think coming out here has been better for that though. Like once in a while, my mom and I will go on a walk together along the bike trail and just look at a little nature. And we get into like pretty deep conversations about ourselves and, kind of relating. And it's a nice feeling though, too, where you're like, oh, hey, you kind of see the world the same way as I do. I get it,
Yeah.
And it's nice to find those things that connect. And going back to the movie, like, I love that those small touches that the T-800 asks, why do you cry? Like the T-800 has a desire and curiosity about human nature. Like he didn't need to ask that question because it doesn't involve his mission at all, but he's picking up on data, however you want to look at it from like a mechanical robotic perspective, but he genuinely wants to learn and understand humans better the way probably a lot of parents do. And through the purity of their kid, you know what I mean? They ask them like, hey, why do you see things that way? And they might learn something in the process because kids tend to have very pure minds without any filter. They just kind of say how they feel about a thing,
Yeah, I was thinking about John and T-800's relationship in this movie. And obviously how economical it is. Like after that LA River chase, how very quickly John's like, time out. I got to know your deal, you know, and you get their dynamic so quickly of like, oh man, I don't have any coins. And Data just pushes through the coin machine. Like it's very quick, right?
Yeah.
It's a very like, it's a wish fulfillment thing of like, what if you just had someone that like when you're a kid, you have such little control over your life, right? Especially at John Connor's age and his circumstance, he feels he has no control over his life. His mom was taken away from him. He hates his foster parents, and now he's on the run because this robot is telling him he's in danger. And I found that like very moving too, just how quickly they get along, because not only because he can order him around, but because he's like, I finally have like purpose. Like I'm with this guy and I have to tell him not to kill anyone. I don't know. As a kid, I think you sometimes, at least I felt a lot that I didn't have any like control over my life. And I felt that like when I was a teenager, I think one of the biggest feelings you have and I had was when I was like, I can't decide what I want to do. That's why I always kind of in a way aspire to live alone. And I love my family, you know. I love my family, but it's also at the same time, like, I think I always like the idea of like creating my fate, if you will. And I find that like, so seeing John go through that, it was reminded me of the feeling that I had when I was a teenager, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting because I know there's an alternate ending to this movie. You know, have you seen it?
What?
You didn't know there's an alternate ending to this movie? This is related. I'm going to relate it back.
Okay, no, I didn't.
There's an extended ending where you see the future again, and you actually see Sarah Connor old and at that park where she had her nightmare of it blowing up. And they put Linda Hamilton in like old people makeup, and she's like I think she's with like John Connor's baby, or like hanging out with John Connor like as like a young man now, or something like that. Yeah. Something along those lines, you know, where she's like an old grandma and you see the future is actually okay. And I'm assuming they cut that because they wanted to potentially leave it open for a sequel, as some endings do.
I mean, but this ending is significantly better than that shit.
Well, what I'm getting at is like, you know, because the comment section were saying like, oh, this would have been a better way to like a more solid ending than leaving it open. But the whole point, though, I am really moved by that final shot of the highway in the dark.
Yeah.
Because what you're talking about a little bit is like that kind of scary feeling of venturing into the unknown. And that could also apply to, obviously they're using it in the movie for like humanity as a whole, which is a crazy question, you know, of like whether or not we're bound to destroy ourselves or not. You know, who knows? If it's not Skynet, it'll be fucking something else 10 years later or something. You know what I mean? You never know. But it's more about the idea of us having that control, you know? And, but even on a small scale though, of like, if, you know, people want to get out of like destructive cycles, you know, if there's something, you know, people have shitty families or people have situations that are really bad and that kind of repeat themselves because people tend to act out their own personal traumas. And it's a scarier feeling to venture out and to do something else, you know what I mean, than act out what you're familiar with. So it's interesting the way people can interpret that.
Well, and also like the fact that like it's not written. Like, I think that's the theme of this movie that jumps out to me the most, is that, like, just because you were raised a certain way, just because you're built a certain way, or just because the future is this literally told to you, this is what happens in the future. Like, nothing is written. You have that choice. So that dark highway means so much because it's like, we don't know what's going to happen, but we also have choices that we can make.
And there's something beautiful and empowering about that too.
We'll talk more about that because there's another, like, her actual narration that I said a little bit of in the synopsis. Like, that's the thing that makes me cry. But okay, I want to shift gears a little bit because thank you. Well, this is, believe it or not, that's a great tangent. So I think we're getting very deep, which is good. But also, I think we need to mention how good of an action movie this is.
Yeah, dude.
Like, how much fucking fun it is. So let's talk about, I mean, I think what I like about this movie is that it is while it is thematically relevant and all the action moves the story forward, it is also so fucking proud to be an action movie.
Yeah.
it has that James Cameron thing, which is like the action feels like muscular, where it feels like every punch is felt, every gunshot, you not only hear it, you feel it. Like, there's no like empty shots. There's no empty bodies. Like if someone's shooting at someone, you're going to see the impact of that. And Patrick Willems did a video essay talking about that exact thing of how James Cameron might not have like a immediate visual style like Tarantino or something that you can pinpoint, but his action is shot in such an efficient and clear way. And I remember when Patrick Willems made that video essay, it changed how I looked at action movies. But anyways, I want to talk about the LA River chase scene. So
Okay.
I think like I watch this movie now and my heart jumps out of my body when I watch that scene. Like I cannot fucking believe where it starts, which is John Connor literally trying to start up his bike to run away from the T-1000. And then the T-1000 comes out and is fucking terrifying because you see that shot right behind John Connor of T-1000 running. I mean, it's Tom Cruise and it's Robert Patrick when it comes to all-time movie runs. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I know. I think like, I'm sure a lot of people know this piece of trivia, but just in case anyone doesn't, Robert Patrick practiced sprinting without breathing through his mouth for that sequence because breathing through your mouth looks very human-like. It looks like, like if you're a person running out of breath. So he practiced breathing through his nose while running so it didn't look like he was a person trying to breathe. And Robert Patrick in general, we'll get to just the general T-1000 in a bit, but his tiny little mannerisms are so... like they all feel like choices. You know what I mean? Like every tiny little movement he makes is a choice as an actor.
We'll have a section where we talk about the villain specifically. So I think we can get into that. Like
we will get into that for sure. So when he's sprinting towards him, it's like a new trick you learn as the movie goes on because you're still curious of what the hell this thing is because he's nothing like Arnold from the first movie. But he feels equally threatening in his own way. And so by the time he starts running after him, you're like, oh, fuck, he can run. At least for me, I felt that. Oh. Like the way he runs is nothing because Terminator just walked the whole way through.
That's such a great way to put it, what you just said. It's like a new trick because when he goes through the bars and you realize, oh, he can just like, he's liquid. He can just walk through shit. Yeah, or when he like, obviously something that is still mind-blowing to me today is when he comes from the floor, right?
Yeah.
And all these things where you're like, the movie slowly kind of reveals what this guy can do, which is which makes every set piece so exciting because you don't know what's going to happen next. Like you don't know what else he's going to do. And so,
yeah.
So John Connor starts racing and it's immediately like something I haven't seen before that you don't see that often, which is an adult running after a kid on a motorcycle. Like just a full on, forget that it's a robot. You're seeing a grown man in a police outfit running after a kid. So you're like, your lizard brain is, even if it can't compute that this is obviously a robot, it's terrifying nonetheless. If you watch this as a silent film, that is a horrifying image.
I have things to say about that, and once we get deeper into the T-1000, I do have things to say about that, the imagery of just why he's in a cop uniform. It's very interesting to me.
So we get to the LA River, and this movie is a great LA movie because, Chris, you don't live in LA anymore, but you lived in LA for longer than I did. You lived there for a decade. I've been living here for 8 years. LA has this very interesting thing that really popped out during COVID to me, which is this city has a lot of problems. Homelessness, like the rent is crazy high. It's super expensive to live here. And the class divide is insane. Like you think it would just be rich people like it is in San Francisco, but it is actually a lot of broke ass like millennials like ourselves. And then obviously like the homeless crisis is horrible.
But we all call ourselves influencers all the same,
But the point I was trying to get to is kind of what you just said, which is like there's also this denial that LA has, which is like, but we're a beautiful sunny city. It's the city of stars. It is like you have all these great restaurants. Korean food is amazing here. Like, but so which is a great city for Terminator to be set in. Which is Terminator is about a movie about humans being in denial and having to come like come to terms with what they've done to themselves.
Yeah.
Like humans have like, especially when we get to the Dyson character. So that's why I just think setting it in LA makes so much sense in that way. Anyways, it's cutting back to the T-800 because John Connor's like racing vroom vroom like you said, and T-1000 gets in that truck, and then it cuts back to the T-800 calmly looking back and forth. He sees that John Connor's now in like the river, which, you know, if you live in LA, you see it on walks if you go on walks or you drive by it. And I mean, the shot that still blows my fucking mind is that truck crashing into the river.
Yeah, when he just flies off and just rips straight through.
Because it's real, man. It's
I know.
real.
I know, that's James Cameron, man. And it's crazy that they made a scene that can hold up so well, because I feel like the first movie, the first movie set such a high bar, because so much of the action in the first one still holds up tremendously well. If you watch the first one isolated without it being in the shadow of the second one, it's still a really fucking good movie.
But the first one was like a very indie movie that was on a lower budget that like was super inspired by John Carpenter. So he like made it feel more like a slasher,
Yeah, exactly. But I guess really what I'm getting at is with the second one is it feels like it's so confident in itself that it doesn't feel because some bigger budget sequels doesn't always mean it's going to be better. It doesn't mean it's going to be as creative or going to be as, like I said, as confident. And, but seeing like an equally memorable chase scene like that is insane that they pulled it off.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think about the amount of times I say to you, like, why did this movie cost $200 million? These past 10 years, movies that are like double the budget of this movie look so horrible. So yeah, you're seeing the money on screen. And then, yeah, obviously, T-800, fucking Arnold, coming in with that motorcycle jump. It's the coolest fucking shit ever.
The way he reloads the shotgun too, that's my favorite personally, is when he's shooting and then he's like whoosh, and just flips the gun in his hand.
It's between that sequence and then the other chase where Arnold like jumps onto the truck that the T-800 is driving, and the truck flips and Arnold's still on it. Like it's later when they're coming towards the third act. Those two sequences, I literally was just like, my God, like, you know what I mean?
I know.
And it came out in 1991, and I'm feeling that,
Yeah, dude, that's fucking crazy. I know. I think there's something very special about that era of action movies too. And maybe I'm just, going to sound like an old man or something, but there's like a bigger danger to it when you see these types of sequences done, that I think when you talk about movies nowadays, especially when, you're talking about like the overly expensive movies, they feel so safe because they were made in front of a green screen and, it is what it is, Remember how like a couple years back, The Rock posted that picture of his new Christmas franchise? Whatever the fuck happened to that franchise, but remember how it's like him in front of a blue screen? I forgot what it was called, but it was him in front of a blue screen with like fucking wires and shit. And you're like, you're showing off this?
Yeah, I think that's what pissed me off. Like, you have the fucking gall to be like, can't wait to show you what we have.
We watched that sequence, by the way. Side note, you and I watched that chase scene. Remember that in Red One?
Wait, to clarify, he's talking about the chase scene that The Rock was teasing on his Instagram that was just blue screen, and then we watched the final result on Red One. I've seen the first 30 minutes. I showed you that specific sequence. I spared you. It's the ugliest looking movie that's come out in the past 10 years. I cannot believe that movie cost like twice the amount this movie did. Anyways, I was gonna say, oh yeah, I think the reason why it feels so dangerous, aside from like the action being shot in such a clean way where you understand the geography and you're, like I already said, you feel like the impact of everything, the characters get dirty, they get sweaty. I think that's so important. Like you see them get frazzled, you see them get fucked up, you see them get beat up, even the T-800 by the end, dude, his like half his like the skin or whatever you want to call it is like fucked up from what the T-1000 did to him.
I need a vacation.
Right? And I mean and so I think that's the problem with modern blockbusters that I know you've said a lot. Like I think you've mentioned many times to me. You're like, why are their clothes so clean? You know?
It really bothers me when it feels like, a lot of movies nowadays do this, and I'm sure older movies have done this too, but like when they show up, especially supposed to come across as like, I remember in Jurassic World Dominion, I was really upset about this, is when you see all the characters coming in, especially when you see the character of Alan Grant like in the middle of working, it looks like he's never worn that shirt in his life. You know what I mean? It looks like he just bought it and put it on. Like, okay, this is like a side tangent that you're kind of triggering for me. You know the feeling of when you go into a department store and you're going to try on some clothes? You ever try on like a new shirt and a new pair of pants and you're like, ooh, this looks good. And then you feel that kind of shame of putting on your old clothes?
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh man, I dress like a fucking slob or whatever. It's because you've been wearing those clothes and they got dirtier. It's just how it happens. It's how life goes. You don't really notice it over time until you compare it to fresh clothes that have never been bought. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and if you can feel that, the audience can sense that as well.
Exactly. And so certain movies can just pull it off really well. I think Spielberg's amazing at that. But this movie does it really well too.
I want to talk about Skynet. I want to talk about the whole idea of like just AI, specifically the Miles Dyson character. He is someone that I do think is a pure fantasy of this movie. Like a genius who came up with something that is so revolutionary, that is like so obsessed with what he's created, that is so excited about the fact that they can move science forward in this way, is shown what happens because of his creation and feels guilty enough to be like, okay, well, all right, so I'm never working there again. Not after this. We're going to have to blow it up. He's so matter of fact. He's like, okay, well, so we're just going to have to destroy it. In the world we live in, I mean, that is just a fucking fantasy to me. That's so, like, that they would just immediately take up on the guilt. But that's what makes this movie beautiful to me. I'm not saying that as a criticism, but I do think this movie is very hopeful in that sense, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel like it's probably somewhere in the middle, in my opinion, because I know exactly where you're getting at. If it happened to one of the big tech boys, while they're in their prime, in the thick of it, they'll probably just avoid it and turn it into something else or whatever.
Not even avoid it and turning it into something else. They'll just straight up deny that it's bad.
I'm just saying, though, if they saw with their own eyes a fucking robotic human tell you what's happening, and like if they had nowhere to go but believe that this is what humanity is faced with, I feel like it would change you to some extent. But what I'm going to get at, though, is I feel like the character of Miles was found at the perfect time because his creation didn't escalate and he didn't become as powerful as he could have been. You know what I'm saying? If they caught him doing the same thing like 10 years from now at the point of the movie, I think you'd be right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So they found him where like, it's like finding Elon Musk before he got the hair plugs.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's how it feels, at least, because he's like at the cusp of his discoveries. You know what I'm saying? He's on the verge, but he's like still a curious scientist guy. You know what I mean?
So obviously, Sarah Connor decides to just like, well, I need to kill him. Mm-hmm. And that scene is fucking haunting, man, when she's like about to like, she puts the red dot on him and I'm like, oh fuck, is this our villain? Like, I don't know. Like, I still watch this movie and that scene is so disturbing, seeing like Sarah Connor be that vicious, you know? And the fact that she's like calling his wife like bitch and she's like not afraid to scare the kids. Like it's this rage, this boiling rage. You get it. You fully understand it, in my opinion. Like, because there are times where I'm just like, fucking kill him. Like, fucking kill him. He's destroyed everything. There's no putting toothpaste back in the tube, which is a very cynical point of view that I've had a lot about technology these past 2 years specifically, which is like, there is nothing good from this. Like there is no hope. We must destroy it. And I think like, so I feel Sarah Connor.
Yeah. I mean, well, especially, you feel it because of the first movie as well. You know what I mean? It's like her own, it's like personal for her too. It's not like she's just doing it in a broad sense of like, oh, this is for humanity, I got to kill you. But it's also like her own revenge. Like, your creations led to my life being ruined by this. you know what I mean, by this giant robot killing my family and friends and all these things that happened in the first movie. And now she's on the run and been, it completely redirected her life, right? Now she has all of this weight on her shoulders of saving humanity. It's all because of this fucking guy had to be curious about how, how far we can go as a species. And we're on the brink of discovery, like John Hammond says,
And yeah, great pull. I love that scene when John and the T-800 are driving to stop Sarah Connor, and the T-800's like, like this could actually help if she killed him. Like, this could help the mission. And John is like, for the last time, we don't kill. You need to understand that we don't do that. It's just that simple, I think James Cameron's gotten a lot of shit in the past for having this, like, for having his movies be these big themes, but be very simplistic. But I also don't think there's anything wrong with that when you're making big mass entertainment. Like, people give a lot of shit about, like, oh, did you know Avatar's about the environment? They'll say it, like, ironically or sarcastically. I'm like,
yeah,
but
of course.
He's making big entertainment for the entire world. Don't you want your message to get across? Like, don't you want your message to, like, get across to everyone, And I just think that's why I like this movie, too, is because it's doing the same thing. It's like, it has such a simple message of, like, we gotta preserve the humanity. So, no, we don't kill. We don't do that, And so when John obviously comes in and Sarah's, like, frozen because she can't believe what she almost did, it's the first time she says, I love you to her son. And I always read it as, like, maybe she never told her son that she loved him. Maybe during that time when they were going from camp to camp, with all these weapons and learning from the best. And maybe she was like someone that was so mission driven that even before she was separated from her son, she never told her son that she loved him because she was so like, that doesn't matter. That's going to get in the way. And I find it so moving is that that's the scene where James Cameron had decided that, like, that's where she's going to tell him that she loves him because he stopped her. He, like, wanted to come in and save her and try to preserve a little bit of humanity that she might have left,
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because, when you say, I'm only curious about this because it's a big part of the movie. When you say, like, that part's, like, mostly fantasy, the idea of talking to him, or communicating with Miles instead of killing him. That's a big part of the movie because Miles ends up giving his life for their cause. And that's kind of the emotional point of it, that instead of creating the cycle, essentially, of killing him, and they know that someone else would have taken his place if they just killed him. They wouldn't have really stopped anything.
Yeah.
But instead, they actually stopped and talked to him and actually communicated and then used him and they helped each other.
Yeah.
Do you disagree with that? Like, that's what we need to do as a species, or do you disagree with, like, the way they went about it?
No. To be clear, I don't disagree that that's what they should have done or not. Like, I don't disagree with anything. I just think that it is a movie. Like, it is something that I find, I'm very cynical about like a person in that position, especially now, would relinquish it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, going back to John Hammond, it took a whole park being destroyed or whatever for him to finally agree that this is a bad idea.
And it took it took Miles Dyson to, like, literally see what happens. I mean, that scene just fucking rules when Sarah's like, show him. And then T-800 Arnold just takes his arm and they're like, oh,
he just peels his skin back.
I love how, like, they're like, oh my God, because if you think about it, imagine, like, a guy like that looks like Arnold coming into your house and just slicing his arm open.
Is an abomination. Yeah, well, and especially because his arm is the same arm that he's showing him that, they preserved in that glass jar. And I love that, just side note, I love that they used that too. Like, it does so much of, like, holding the mirror to the first movie, of how,
without making it feel like you needed to watch the first movie.
Totally. It's one of those where the story stands on its own really well, but it does a lot of, like, tasteful callbacks without relying on nostalgia or relying on, fan service. It uses it to its advantage. Again, like you said, like, Linda Hamilton coming in, they probably looked at her like how Linda Hamilton looked at the T-800 in the first movie. You know what I mean? Her coming in cold-blooded, shooting at them, you know what I'm saying?
Great
And
point.
so,
Yes. Yeah.
it's just really interesting, seeing her become this kind of shell of who she was. And then through, like you said, through the love of her son and her son wanting to save her, it's very Luke Skywalker-esque. You know what I mean? The way that, family can kind of rope you back and kind of pull you into, whatever path you're supposed to be on.
Hell yeah, man. Dude, I didn't even think of that. That's a great comparison. I love the small moment where she's on the table and Dyson's kind of like, all shook up, and he's kind of explaining like, we were on the precipice and we were like creating something like that had never been done before, and he stops himself. Right?
Yeah.
And it's very like, it's what happens to scientists throughout history, right? And then Linda Hamilton literally says it. Sarah Connor literally says it. He's like, men like you build the hydrogen bomb. You think you're so creative and don't know what it's like to create something inside of you. She starts giving this like big monologue that's both about like the consequences of the ambition of men and also about what it means to be a mother, and that's what true art is. It's like, I think it's super like James Cameron. That's such a James Cameron monologue.
Yeah.
And I love, though, how it's like John Connor looks back. He's like, Mom, this is not helping.
It's like, please.
We gotta remember, we gotta figure out an actual solution. And I this is gonna be weird, but I connect to that scene a lot because both, I do agree that, Oppenheimer made, you can watch in the movie. I read American Prometheus, the book that the movie's based on. The scientists that worked on the bomb at least most of them didn't have this thing of being patriotic and preserving America. They were just given the tools to use their genius to the full potential in a way they had never had before. So they were excited about moving science forward, without really stopping. Without stopping for even a second. And
about thinking about the costs.
Until it's too late. And so I like that monologue for that reason, but I also like that monologue for that reason because I do feel like, in a small sense, that scene is you and me. I will have these long fucking rants about just I get so cynical sometimes. And I think you do a very good job being my friend and just being like, okay, man, well, you're not changing the world and you're not really helping by being super cynical about it either. You know what I mean?
Sir, this is a Chili's. All right. What do you want to order? Day by day.
Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah. I've always been one, and we've probably gone down, we've talked about this a bit, especially on our Alien podcast. That is a back and forth you and I tend to have. And I just, like you said, I also agree with a lot of the things you say. I do think, people humans make stupid decisions and humanity makes stupid decisions as it goes.
I mean, it's in our nature to destroy ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I've always felt and I want to say we talked about this recently, but I've always felt like every piece of history and every piece of the world has this really dark thing going on that will affect how we see the world. And I think the universe, however you want to see it, it always challenges us to appreciate things, always challenges us to try to see the good in things. And without that, how would we even understand the good if there wasn't bad? You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah, and man. It's like we're getting to Samwise speech level in Two Towers,
a little. Maybe that's what. Yeah, I think we talked. That's why it feels familiar in my head. I think we talked about this a little bit in the Lord of the Rings episode.
Okay, so I think let's talk about, why do you think the T-1000 is such an effective villain? I know you specifically were bringing this point up when we were discussing talking points before we started recording, so I want you to take the lead on it. Why do you think he's such an effective villain?
Well, the first most obvious thing is I feel like a lesser filmmaker would have made him bigger and louder and tougher. Yes. You know what I mean? Let's cast a wrestler, someone who's just as big as Arnold, and they would both duke it out. You know what I'm saying? A lesser filmmaker would do that. But instead, they went the complete polar opposite and made a really sleek, style of villain that you don't know what to expect. Like I said, there's a new bag of tricks every sequence. I think one of the eeriest and most unique things about the T-1000 is how quietly he kills people. I just love that. Like, whenever he kills people, there's no big scream. Because especially compared to the first movie, the T-800 just fucking threw people into walls, shot people, blew them up. Like, he didn't give a shit. He walked into that police station and just blew it the hell up, you know? But,
well, yeah, I mean, it's the milk carton scene, right? That's the example of, like, how quiet and sinister he is.
Exactly, the milk carton scene. And then also later, like, towards the last third of the movie or so, when he's going to steal the guy's... I think he was going to steal his truck. Remember? He's like, hey, are you okay? And he just impales him immediately and throws him to the side. He kills people very quietly and efficiently. And also the other guy who, when they use the twin actors, you know, when he impaled his eyeball with his finger.
Sure. I was also thinking of the helicopter of, like, get out.
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, the introduction shots towards the end when he arrives at Cyberdyne, where it shows him wearing the helmet and you see the fire in his, like, glasses. Yeah. I'm like, man, James Cameron just shot the shit out of that dude.
I know, dude. Him with the helmet and sunglasses is my favorite look for the T-1000.
So cool.
But
okay, go ahead. Sorry.
The other way that he improves on the T-800 is that he's also more emotionally vocal when he talks. You know what I mean? He seems more like a person. When he goes and asks about John Connor, he's like, hello, ma'am. Have you seen John Connor around here? Or whatever. He sounds like a trustworthy cop.
Well, I find it so cool because it's like, oh, the machines, like, kind of regrouped. They had some meetings and they talked about what didn't work and what they need to do next time.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that they maybe talked about is like, okay, we got to make him a little bit more personable, you know?
Exactly. And Robert Patrick does such a fucking good job at that. Like, especially in that dialogue scene, you know, with John Connor's foster parents when he's first asking about him. It almost feels like every little eye movement, everything he does feels like a machine trying to mimic a person. Like the little blinks that he does, like that blink was a choice. I'm watching it. I'm like thinking like that blink that robot chose to do to try to emulate a person.
The best one is the finger wagging one towards the end.
Oh yeah, exactly. The finger wagging. But all of those things together though, yeah, like I said, just put together this menacing creature almost, you want to call it, you know?
Before we talk about the ending, just another shouty to Bad to the Bone. I mean, come on.
Like, oh, yeah. Speaking of which, when you say this movie like had a blast being an action movie, as soon as Bad to the Bone comes on, you're like, all right, I'm in for a ride.
I think even James Cameron was a bit skeptical if that would work.
Yeah, I mean, it's corny. It is corny, but it's like unapologetically corny, and it's awesome.
It deserves it, and it feels like the movie's waiting for that. You know what I mean? Like the movie, again, the first like 5-10 minutes or so are so drab and like depressing that when we get to Arnold going into that fucking like bar and just fucking everyone up, grabbing the motorcycle, getting the sunglasses. Like, you feel like the movie's like, it's just this relief of like, oh yeah, we're also in a fun action movie.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, we get to this factory. It's just really cool shots in this entire scene. This is where I feel like everyone that worked on the visual effects of this movie were just like flexing. This is everything they had in this scene. Because it is revolutionary shit, like the T-1000 coming out all frozen and then shattering. And
yeah, dude.
And then him obviously coming back again. Him basically his body attaching itself to its surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be the railing or the ground, you know?
Yeah. I mean, like, especially I remember how, like, mind blown and frustrated I was that it didn't die when it was frozen. Because you think like, oh, okay, cool. That was a cool little death. Right on.
Yeah, because Arnold says, hasta la vista, baby. And then you're like, oh, that's cool. It's a callback. He did it, you know?
Yeah, and then you're like, oh, fuck, it's still alive.
I mean, is there before we get to the actual like emotional impact of the ending, is there anything that you wanted to shout out? Because I don't want to just rush by it if there's something you wanted to mention.
No, I mean, like, I guess really the one thing I just wanted to bring up is just the facial special effects done on Arnold. It looks so fucking cool still. When you see just the metallic skeleton underneath him.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, especially, not to just totally harp on the first one, but the first one, he was full skeleton by the third act. He was full, just, metallic skeleton robot. But now we get to see that little blend, that little bit of both, where you still get to see Arnold's face and feel like that's a human. You get to emotionally connect to it.
Yes, 100%. And it makes sense for the story too, because he feels like he is also understanding humanity a little bit better.
Exactly. He's holding on to that part of himself almost.
Okay, so obviously when the T-1000 is destroyed, before he fully burns, he's turning into like all the people he's like transformed into, which I think is a eerie sequence, but this might be a stretch. But I was trying to think about last night. I was like, what does that mean besides it being very eerie? And I was like, I wonder if there is something to be said about how in this conversation of AI taking over and they're not humans, there's also this side conversation of everything that's in AI, it is referencing from humans. Like it is taking from humans. And this movie's so much about what humanity is. And when the T-1000 destroyed, what the people's it's not screaming in agony. It's the people he transformed into, because those are what actually made him.
Yeah, it has no real identity of its own. It doesn't have its own scream. Robert Patrick doesn't have a scream.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
No, I 100% understand what you're saying. Yeah, like you said, it's all an imitation. You could even argue, I don't know any of the expanded lore, if there's any comic book or something that explain this, but I don't know who Robert Patrick is and the actual Terminator lore, if they base the liquid metal off of a real human. But chances are it is based off of some scientist that it's only mimicking. I remember hearing the lore of why the T-800 has his Austrian accent.
Oh, sure.
And people have said that because the scientist that developed it was Austrian and they voiced his model off of it or something like that. It's like, it's a cute little way to justify Arnold's accent. But
man,
point is what you're getting at though. Yeah, like when the machine's being destroyed, it has nothing left of itself, basically, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's destroyed. There's one more. There's the chip. You realize T-800 has to sacrifice himself. I know now why you cry, but it is something I can't do. I mean, come on.
And he wipes off John Connor's tear.
It's like he understands it. Like he gets it. He truly gets it. And the tears have nothing to do with the mission. The tears have nothing to do with like, it's not practical, but he understands why, I mean, I don't know, man. It's one of the most iconic images from the movie. That thumbs up. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, dude. I know. And every time I watch it, I think, and I'm sure pretty much like, the entire Terminator fan base is like, this is such a perfect ending. Like, I'm just going to pretend the rest of them never got made. Like the Terminator 3 never happened. None of them. Because even like this particular T-800 model is the best character out of all of them. You know what I mean? They keep bringing Arnold back to be different versions of the T-800, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
But nothing's going to top this one. You know what I mean?
Oh, no, I mean, it's so clear that this is the best one.
Yeah. I know, it's devastating. Especially, it is the thumbs up, like you said. When he's fully submerged, you just see his hand sticking out, and he does the thumbs up. And they verify where you see the little computer-y symbols, shutting down.
We cut to that shot of the highway, and I'm just going to recite it. The unknown future rolls towards us. I face it for the first time with a sense of hope. Because if a machine, a Terminator, can learn the value of human life, maybe we can too. I mean, I just fucking cried last night. Like, I was like...
dun, 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 dun.
Oh, yeah, the music is fantastic, by the way. We didn't even talk about that. But the music is just insane. But I cried last night. I just, like, I think... I cry a lot during that final monologue. But I think LA's been going through a really tough time for anyone who's been reading the news. And then also the world is going through a very tough time if you read the news.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's fucking hard, man. It's fucking hard to see anything. It's like you see just darkness. And I don't know, there is that feeling of just like there is value in human life. To have that hope for human life means a lot. It's, because I think throughout this movie, there's so many shots of two kids playing with guns, and John asking the T-800 are just like, there's no shot, like we're doomed, right? Like, or something like that. And then he says it's in our nature to destroy ourselves. Like, this movie is starting at a place of like, we're done, man. That's why I said in my synopsis, like, we're cooked, which is this feeling that everyone always talks about. Like, oh, humanity's done for. We had our shot. And I think that it's amazing that this movie ends with this line of like, there is hope for us,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the idea that it was the machines that literally destroyed humanity because of what we were doing to ourselves. And they managed to teach one machine that humans are worth a damn. You know what I mean? And so it's like, even that, if that's like a sliver of hope, it's something,
I can't find a single flaw in it. It just is a perfect movie. I don't know.
It's a pretty fucking perfect movie. I wouldn't change anything about it.
Okay. Well, if there's nothing else you want to bring up, Chris, is there any other shout you want to give to this movie before we move on to write-ins?
Not off the top of my head.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah. The entire Cyberdyne sequence, Dyson's like final breath, that is fucking terrifying. But that
scene was intense.
Joe Morton is the actor. He fucking kills it. And then the callback to I'll Be Back is just amazing.
Yeah, dude.
And they earn it because he comes out, and I love the running gag in this movie is like, okay, you can't kill anyone. But he basically like makes sure they never walk again. A lot of them probably have brain damage for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. I mean, if Batman could do it, I'll let the Terminator do it too.
No, I love it, but it's just really funny. Like, he's like, I'm not going to kill them, but I'm really going to destroy them.
I'm going to fuck them up hard.
And,
small shouty. Oh, go ahead.
And then obviously in the first movie, the I'll Be Back led to him coming back with the car and crashing into the police station. In this one, it's him taking a whole fucking SWAT truck and driving it into it.
Yeah.
It's such a great one-up for the sequel.
100%. Yeah, it's amazing. Quick small shouty to when in the beginning of the movie, when he's riding on the motorcycle with John Connor, and he's saying that the other Terminator is probably at your house, is going to be waiting for you there. And he's like, how do you know that? He's like, I would. It's like, that's what I would do if I were trying to kill you.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you've quoted that scene to me before. Yeah, no, it
probably, yeah.
It's a great piece of writing. So we asked you guys how Terminator 2 changed you, and you emailed us in at moviesthatchangedus@gmail.com. If you want to know the next time you can email us and what movie we're going to be covering, you can follow us on all our socials, Instagram, TikTok, here on YouTube, stay subscribed, or on our Patreon at Movies That Changed Us. The first write-in comes from Ash Wolf. I'll start. My brother and I watched this constantly, that we wore out the tape and became a Mother Rewinds only movie. We had quite a few of those. I don't think we understood it was a sequel until later. We watched it for the action, not the story. As I've gotten older, I have enjoyed a lot of James Cameron's work and hold this movie and Aliens as my favorites of his, both for action and story. I enjoy watching the Terminator go from just a killing machine to something a little bit more human, from being just a protector to both a protector and a steadying presence in John Connor's life. Though I have seen the Terminators that have come after this one, only 1 and 2 are on my video shelf. I enjoy popping the disc into the player and immersing myself back into Arnold's emotionless yet emotional delivery, and glad I don't have to ask my mom to rewind it anymore. Hope you both have a nice day with no looming prophecies over your heads. Ash Wolf.
Thank you, Ash. Yeah, I love that.
Good point on Arnold's performance. We didn't really talk about that.
Yeah. I was actually going to jump in on that too, just because I do feel like Arnold is actually excellent as a Terminator beyond just because a lot of people say oh, anyone can play Terminator because he's just a big dude that just says things, but there's a unique physicality that Arnold brings to Terminator that's different than any of his other movies, in my opinion.
I'm glad you said that because I don't know if you remember, a long time ago we were talking about how Arnold's really good in Terminator, and you were the one who said, you were like, well, I mean, let's not really get excited about how good his performance is. He is just playing like a robot. And so I'm happy that you're you are saying that.
You know what's funny is I don't remember that at all. I totally believe it, but I probably was talking out of my ass at the time, so forgive me for that.
I'm not trying to call you out. It's just that but yeah, he's amazing in this movie.
Yeah. This is from Carly Rich. Hey, nice guys. Once again, you are covering one of my favorite movies. I know I'm a tad older than you two, so let me try to set the scene. I was 11 years old in the summer of 1991, and back then the most important TV channel for us kids was MTV, back when they actually played music videos. Do I sound old yet? And one of the most important music videos that was played that summer was You Could Be Mine by Guns N' Roses. MTV played that video constantly, and if you've ever seen the official video, it was basically an extended trailer/commercial for Terminator 2 Judgment Day. I cannot even separate the movie from that music video. They are so intrinsically ingrained into my memory of that summer, which I'm going to jump in real quick. I feel that way about Hero by Chad Kroeger featuring Josie Scott for the Spider-Man soundtrack.
Yes, great comparison. Yeah.
Because the music video is just a bunch of highlights from it. And also, just side note for the record, that song is not Nickelback. It's Chad Kroeger featuring Josie Scott. I have to say that.
You've mentioned this in our podcast episode for Spider-Man, yeah.
Make no mistake, I'm not going to stop, too. Okay, back to this letter. My love for early 90s Guns N' Roses aside, the movie was an absolute phenomenon when it came out. I have since watched every single movie and TV show from the Terminator franchise, and while I personally believe that the best movies are the ones with Linda Hamilton in them, I'm a genuine fan of every iteration. Well, let's pretend Genesis never happened, okay? There is just something about the world that James Cameron conceived of that just lights my imagination on fire. The concept that one random average person living today might end up saving the human race in the future, not to mention time travel and killer robots, is just such fun fodder for the mind. Anyway, I can go on and on. I haven't even mentioned any of the extremely quotable one-liners, but I've already said too much. Hasta la vista, baby. And as always, stay nice, dudes. Well, thank you so much, Carly. This is just a side note. I love when our fans say "stay nice." It's just one of those kind of cool things that that phrase really people have been saying it for like 3 years now.
It also gives us fond memories of when we had the reaction channel.
Yeah, and not trying to smoke ourselves up. I'm more just saying that it does warm my heart. That people live by that.
So I have heard about that. The marketing of this movie was very unique in that sense, where you couldn't escape that music video. You couldn't escape the trailers. It was one of those early instances of a blockbuster coming out and being marketed in that way, which in today's world, that's just how movies are marketed.
But and the movie was good too. That's always a bonus. Nowadays it's not quite the same. We can have movies violently marketed and then they still suck.
Hey man, sometimes it works. Sinners worked,
That's true.
Daniel Walsh writes in, "Hello, nice dudes. It's your boy Dan here to talk about Arnold Schwarzenegger for a few minutes. This and the first film are ones that I once again have to give credit to my dad for showing me a couple years ago.
Hell yeah.
I had seen Arnold in Kindergarten Cop before, but this was my first glimpse of the true awesomeness that Arnold provides. I always liked this film better than the first, and because of that, it is one of the best sequels ever made. T2 has had a great impact on how I look at action movies, and the turn of the T-800 from the bad in the first film to the good in this one is genius. That about wraps it up for now, so until next time, hasta la vista, baby. This has been your boy, Dan."
Our boy, Dan.
So that turn specifically, again, there's so much to talk about this movie. I mean, the box of roses dropped to reveal the rifle. Come on.
I know. Come on. Terminator was a character in Mortal Kombat 11 as a guest
here
character.
We go.
And you're welcome. One of his intros that he has is he walks in and he unloads his gun from a box, and it's like a box of Johnny Cage action figures. So he opens it out of a box of Johnny Cage and steps on it as he's walking. It's kind of cool.
That's pretty fun. Yeah. I like Mortal Kombat, so I'm just giving Chris shit, guys. I just want people to know that. Okay,
right, cool.
So we got, and this person was nice enough to let us know how to pronounce his name, because I think the last time we might have messed it up, but my name's pronounced Ville, or if you want to get ambitious, Ville, with a sort of double L and a simple E sound at the end. I will not get ambitious respectfully, because I'll fuck it up, and I'll say Ville. Ville Hallinan writes, "I was 11 when the movie came out, but two other things came out as well. First, the music video from the Guns N' Roses song You Could Be Mine, which in one stroke killed my interest in any previous, often childlike music that I dug and made me a hard rock kid. The video had clips of the movie, and man, they were the talk of the schoolyard the next day. John had such cool hair, and the part where he see badass Sarah Connor turn around and face the camera, he writes this, by the way, with a multiple E's. Shit. I still get full body goosebumps. And the T-1000, the CGI was new and cool and incredibly expensive. Computer generated effects were the future. Second, the pretty bad comic book version came out. Because I wasn't old enough to see it in theaters and I didn't know any better, I bought the comic book first and read it and read it and reread it. I think it was based on the script because it had some scenes that I only later saw in the extended cut. But so, when I finally saw the movie, maybe 6 months later, the time it took for a new Hollywood movie to be released on VHS in Finland, I already knew the story inside and out. Best regards and all my love to two of my fave movie podcasters.
Aww.
I think that's I think that's so fascinating. Just like multiple things. Obviously, how much of an impact the Guns N' Roses music video had on the marketing of this movie, which I want to check out that music video now. But also, too, I think the interesting thing of like this movie is so exciting. I'm not old enough to see it, so I'm going to read everything around it. I'm going to get my hands on it because I desperately want to, but my parents won't let me to. That is such a specific period in time feeling, you know?
I used to do that with video games, funny enough, where the promotional video game would come out. What the fuck? I love how you opened up the conversation and then I'm like, I relate to it. Like, oh, here Chris goes. I feel like I'm being booby trapped, man.
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like, I used to have the same thing with video games when, like, the promotional movie-based game would come out well before the movie actually came out. And so it was, remember, I think we talked about that in the Revenge of the Sith podcast, because I played that game before the movie actually came out. And I got to, it was like my way of trying to experience it. And I think a lot of kids do that because we're not patient enough, you know, to like hold off until the movie. You know what I'm saying? Like nowadays we can do that, but back as kids, we didn't care about that stuff.
No,
etiquette.
That's true. You were just so excited, you know? Yeah, I forgot. That's exactly kind of what you did with Revenge of the Sith. Well, thank you guys so much for writing in. Thank you so much to our patrons for supporting us again and again. And if you want to go ahead and check out our Patreon for only $5, you can watch our bonus show, Movies That Played Us, and see if Chris guesses all the movie poster taglines. Thank you so much for watching, and stay nice, dudes.